I'm not going to make excuses. We sucked out there. We didn't get the job done. We dropped the ball. Um, you don't need to look any farther than me.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Extra Point presented by Microsoft Surface. I'm Shelby Cassesse in for Missy Matthews. A tough loss for the Steelers, 41-10 in Cincinnati on Sunday. An equally big, if not bigger, AFC North matchup up ahead against the Baltimore Ravens. Let's bring in our panelists now to break down what happened in Cincinnati and how can the Steelers move forward as they work their way against Baltimore. Joining us now is Craig Wolfley, former offensive lineman and part of the radio broadcast team, Charlie Batch, former Steelers quarterback and Steelers.com contributor, and Arthur Moats, former linebacker and Steelers Nation radio contributor. Guys, going into this game on Sunday, we were hopeful getting TJ Watt back and Minkah Fitzpatrick back would have been a big boost for this defense, but they only got to Joe Burrow twice. Charlie, what could the defense have done better yesterday, and what can they do better moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you knew what they were going to do coming into the game, and that was run the football, and they were able to get off to a fast start. And unfortunately, Steelers weren't able to counter with anything schematic-wise. So I think that's just a challenge for it. And when you hear Cam Hayward come out flat out and just say, we stunk, we didn't take care of our business, that lets that the opinions are surfacing around the actual locker room, and that's how everybody feels.
And Arthur, this is now 2 weeks in a row that the Steelers have given up 40 points. What can the defense do to get back on track?
To me, man, it starts with stopping the run. When you talk about these past couple of games, teams have been able to run the ball and ultimately take away one of the best things that we do as a defense, which is get after the quarterback. It's hard to rush the passer when it's 2nd and 5. It's hard to rush the passer when it's 3rd and short. And a lot of that stems from, possession downs, or not possession downs, the opening drive of downs, that first down play just not being good enough. And a lot of that is when you look at these running plays that they're allowing, these guys are picking up significant yardage on the ground. I mean, Joe Mixon yesterday, he was right around 6 yards a pop almost every time he ran that ball. Those are the things that can't happen if you want this defense to get back to being the defense that we know and the defense that we fell in love with.
Can we expect to see change on either side of the ball when it comes to the lines?
We're open to doing whatever's required to change, what's trending. And so you may certainly see changes.
Wolf, when you hear a coach say that, as a former player yourself, what goes through your mind and what do you think is going through the mind of that locker room right now?
Ooh, it's getting a little warm in here. Let's see who's close to my position. And, because everyone starts to internalize that. Look, one of the things about it is defensively speaking, you talk about the X's and O's. Well, it's the Jimmies and Joes. We're beyond schematics now. And I think these guys would agree. This is about personally applying your ability to whatever your job requirement is. And it's the same thing when you start to hear about there's changes to be made. One of the things that you got to be careful of is what Chuck Noll always used to say. You don't change for the sake of change. Just to change is no change at all. And so whatever change you might undergo has to be something that you think constructively is going to create a better, more positive outcome at that particular position. So, to me, it sounds like they're thinking about some changes, but let's face it. I mean, defensive line, we're down to guys that, you got off the practice squad. We got a few guys coming back, but again, it's more about, can we have guys that can meet the standard, and then be able to play at the standard? That's a difficult question right now.
And when it comes to this run game, Charlie, we've talked about this week after week, getting the run game going. Didn't happen against Cincinnati yesterday. What changes do you need to see with this offense to get the run game going?
Well, I think it starts with possibly taking the ball first, and that gets you into your rhythm. Anytime you win the toss and you defer and you put the defense on the field and they actually give up a touchdown, and then you get behind, sometimes it's hard to get back into rhythm to try to establish that running game. So I think for me, I would love to take the ball first just so you can maybe get some things going and play ahead. And that's just difficult because right now we've been looking and wondering what could we possibly do to keep it consistently going throughout the year. We've had some spurts, then we haven't. But right now, it's just a matter of trying to figure it all out. And it starts with the identity. And right now, this team just does not have an identity on the offensive side.
And Wolf, when you talk about this run game and you talk about having a new playmaker like Najee Harris, oftentimes you see teams get smarter and get to know the scheme a little bit better. Is that happening with Najee Harris in the run game? What can we do to get more, I guess, a better look at the run game and get it going again?
Well, the biggest thing about it is being able to move the people at the point of attack. You know, when you get people movers at the point of attack, actually moving people, you're going to have success in the run game. One of the things that had been happening with this offensive line was they were gaining ground. They were gaining some momentum. We saw some detailed work. You got the double teams taking some guys off the ball, right? You saw some of the whammers, the trappers. They come down the line. They're getting inside out position. They're increasing the distance that the hole is opening up at the point of attack on the backside. They were sealing on the backside. Well, they're falling prey to some of the problems now. They've got to reboot and go back to the fundamentals. Chuck Noll always talked about back to basics. You've got to go to the fundamentals and redo the fundamentals. And one of the things I think that is problematic for the guys today is they don't get enough pad time, such as we used to have back in our day. Of course, we had maybe too much pad time, but there's a balance there where you can get some hitting done and work your fundamentals, because it's the fundamentals that carry you through all during the season long. And when things get choppy, it's your fundamentals. When things are rolling, it's because you're executing your fundamentals. So to me, it's about doing that.
All you guys are former players. I'm sure you each have a really tough loss that you can remember back in your playing career. And I want to hear from each of you. Arthur, we'll start with you. How did you move past that game, and what can these players do now to move on to Baltimore?
Man, so you thought about losing and I was the first guy that came to your mind. That's crazy. All right. That's crazy. But one of the games that sticks to me, I believe it was the 2016 season. We lost to the Miami Dolphins on the road. I think Jay Ajayi at the time had rushed for almost 200 yards on us. It was a bad, abysmal performance. I think we had lost 4 in a row up until that point. And similar to what was going on with this team right now, a lot of questions were being had. Are we good enough to make a run? Are we good enough to even have a winning record? Does everybody need to be fired? Is it coaching related? But the one thing that we all said was we controlled our destiny. We felt that, man, the teams that were on paper ahead of us, we didn't think that there was this big gap from a talent standpoint. We thought that we were good enough. We just thought we couldn't commit the self-inflicted wounds. And I remember us rallying together, and I think we won 11 or 12 games in a row that year. We ended up losing in the AFC Championship game. But it was that loss, that rock bottom feeling that ultimately made us all band together and start playing for one another and just understanding the basics like Wolf was talking about. Man, if that's your job on this blocking assignment, make that block. If this is my opportunity to make a tackle right here, make that tackle. If I'm supposed to make this catch, make that catch. And we got back to those basics, and that really helped us make the run that we did make.
Charlie, what's the best way to move on from a loss like this?
Well, I think when I hear Minka Fitzpatrick talk about maybe we need to take practice a little bit serious, that means maybe these little things are starting to creep in. It kind of reminds me of 2006. We started the season off 2-6, and we had a bad loss against the Ravens in Baltimore. I think we ended up losing that game 27-0. And we had a meeting of the minds, and we ended up finishing 2-6 on the other side to get to 800, to get to 500, which we finished 8-8 that season. But the one that was under Coach Cowher. Now, the one that brings me closer to speed as it relates to Mike Tomlin is 2011. Again, it was Baltimore going down, and we got our butts whooped and got it handed to us in the season opener. We ended up losing that game 35-7. Everyone around the country wrote us off, and at that point, we needed to regroup. Now, we finished that season 12-4, so we were able to rebound, but it's just one of those things that at some point you got to now remove the emotions, and you have to take this harsh criticism to say, listen, we put this on tape. It's not like we can hide away from it, because everybody around the country is watching this and knowing the expectations now coming into this week. Guys now have to be prepared. So if you watch the news when it's good, you better watch it when it's bad, because you have to take the good with the bad and remove it. And now, guess what? Next week, you have a chance to regroup and do something about it.
Wolf, any games stick out in your mind that were especially tough, and how do you move past it? What advice would you give to these guys right now?
Guard your mind, guard what you put into it. Look, it's important, because I remember in '89, okay, I got all you guys all whipped as far as how we got whipped, all right? 51-0 by the Browns. We go to Cincinnati. We didn't lose 41-10. We lost 42-10, okay? So we're sitting there at 0-2. The USA Today has big headlines that says, Has Chuck Noll, has football, gone beyond Chuck Noll? Is he too old for the game? And you're sitting there going, wow, this is all coming around. We got the Minnesota Vikings coming in 2-0. They've been whooping everybody the first 2 weeks. And I remember thinking to myself, my goodness, we could lose an unbelievable, point spread at Three Rivers there. And we ended up whipping them. And it was because that week, I remember everybody was like talking about it. It was this, you got to ratchet up your mind, the RPMs in your gourd, because Zooks, man, you can get run out of the stadium and totally humiliated and embarrassed. Hey, we're all pros. We understand this is a big boys game. And like Chuck said, you got to be prepared for the good, the bad, and everything else. And you take it, you stand up, take the criticism, but you don't have to live with it. You can turn things around. And that's the important lesson to remember. It can be done. It can be turned around. These guys have already shown 5 times they can win a game. All right. So it takes just getting back to that resolve and getting the job done. But by no means is this season over, or can you not recover from it. Those guys out there are highly paid professionals. The guys you are paying are highly paid professionals. But you have that opportunity as a group to muster up and make sure, don't believe everything that you read out there, though. And understand that you got the ability within the 4 walls of that locker room to make sure that you come out and answer all the questions, because nobody's riding in from the East to save these guys. All the answers to all the questions are found within that locker room.
And one of the quotes that I love that Mike Tomlin always shares when you have these particular moments, he says, the game is football, our business is winning. So now we have an opportunity this week to right the ship. And I'm guaranteeing you that that's what Mike Tomlin is going to share his message this week when they start preparing for the Ravens.
Arthur, when you think about this locker room right now, does anyone need to step up? Does any team leader need to step up and say something, give an impassioned speech to everyone? Or is it unsaid and everyone knows what needs to be done at this point?
I do think to an extent the leaders have spoken up. When you hear Cam Hayward speaking the way that he spoke to the media, Mika Fitzpatrick, those guys are your leaders. Now, it doesn't always have to be the close the door, players only, we're going to have this heart-to-heart come to Jesus type speech. But at the same time, one of the other things that Coach Tomlin always talks about after performances, whether they are good or bad, is don't seek comfort. And what he means by that is ultimately holding yourself accountable, looking at the film, chewing on the good and the not so good, but being real about it. And that's something that if you're a part of this team right now, I don't think you need a rah-rah speech from a leader to get you to understand that. I think that if you looked at how things have been going and you say that, hey, that's the status quo, that's not enough, well, what can we be doing to improve upon that? And it starts with looking at yourself, looking at the individual and saying, well, what can I be doing to make this team better? What can I be doing? Even if I'm just a special teams guy, how can I impact this team positively? But like I said, Coach Tomlin, he's always the guy that's going to be presenting that message in terms of not seeking comfort. And it resonates through the locker room. So I don't think it necessarily has to be a formal one player, one captain get up and have a speech for the message to be received the right way.
Charlie, what do you think needs to be done in that locker room? What types of conversations need to be had? And what would you do as a leader on this team when you were in your playing days?
Yeah, I mean, being around with Coach Tomlin for 6 years, we've never had, in my 6 years, we never had a players-only meeting. Why? Because we believe the messaging that Coach Tomlin was actually relaying to us. So we didn't necessarily need that extra raw speech. We all knew what was at stake. But right now, these young guys are starting to now try to come into their own and trying to figure out the identity that one is a player, but what are they going to do culturally as a team? Because they all have yet to really accomplish that, because this is a new group than what it was a year ago. So these guys are all starting to get there. There's a lot of young guys. But when you look at this point of the season, you say, guys, we have 6 games to go. If we want to try to go out there and accomplish our goal, which is hoisting that Lombardi trophy, we have to win 5 of the next 6 minimum at this point. So it's all right there in front of them. And guess what? Every team that potentially is going to be in the playoffs is right there on your schedule. So if you're able to figure out a way to beat them, that will gain the confidence heading into this postseason. So I'm not saying that this season is over by any means. These players know it's right in front of them. And right now you look back and say, we have 2 games in almost 11 days. We have to handle this. And if we can get to the mini bye after that mini Minnesota week, that'll give us a little bit of rest in anticipation of finishing out this season.
Wolf, you got Baltimore right up ahead now. Got to have a short memory this week, right?
I've always had a short memory. No, the point is, that's what ball players have to have. You have to have that short memory. Look, the dreaded only players meeting is something that, that's a last resort. Usually when you hear stuff like that, guys are bailing on that. And it's just one of those things that you just go, Oh, please no. If there was one in my entire 12 years, there was just one team meeting that I remember, one players only meeting. And the great Joe Green spoke up. And that was the only time I remember, A, everybody listening, B, everybody shutting up, and C, something productive coming out of it because we went on and won. So I will give you that, but that was one of a kind. That was Mean Joe Green.
And it's funny, you said in terms of your one positive players only meeting, I was a part of other organizations that weren't as successful. We had a lot of player only meetings. In fact, it was like you get a player only meeting this week, we'll have another one next weekend, and we just go keep meeting until, we've all went through the roster, and the results still didn't change. So yes, I'm glad that somebody had a successful players only meeting because I've never seen them. Yeah.
Arthur, how do you turn it around so quickly going into Baltimore? It's a big game.
Yeah, the 24-hour rule is very important. Whether you're winning or losing, 24 hours, and after that, you have to flush it and move on to the next because you can't allow last week's performance to dictate or deter your preparation for this game right here. Baltimore, are they good? Sure, their record is good on paper. They're the number one team in the AFC, but you watch them on tape and they are very much flawed, just like every other team in the AFC. So with that being the case, you have to say, man, this is a great opportunity for us to get back on track. We know we can do some things that they struggle with. Now, are they going to have some challenges? 100%. But we have the personnel in place that matches up well with them and the history of the Steelers versus Lamar Jackson as well. All of those things point to this team feeling optimistic, feeling motivated about this weekend's matchup. And now it's going to be, putting that work in on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then ultimately going out there and executing on Sunday. But yeah, if you're this team, man, you have to still be feeling good because you control your destiny right now.
All right, that's going to do it for us here on the Extra Point presented by Microsoft Surface. Join us later this week for the matchup show where we'll preview the Baltimore Ravens Pittsburgh Steelers game coming up this Sunday. For Craig Wolfley, Charlie Batch, and Arthur Moats, I'm Shelby Cassesse. Have a great day.